RotoGrinders. Hey, it's the DFS pregame show. Yeah, it is the pregame show. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. Blender Ed, a.k.a. Blender HD, a.k.a. Hopefully on top of you in GPPs. Last night, maybe so I didn't play any Tyler Chatwood, so it's hard not to make money when you don't play the worst pitcher on the slate. So I was good yesterday. We got all the people here in YouTube for the pregame show. Man Monkey 600 puke stacks for the win last night. They're vomit stacks. Puke stacks is like if you call it puke stacks, that's like Honey Nut Cheerios is the brand name, and then like the Toasted O's or whatever generic name cereal that they have in the bag at your supermarket. That's puke stacks. So use the proper term, vomit stacks, trademark at the end of it. Feel free to call it puke stacks, but that's the generic version of that term. But welcome to the DFS pregame show. Hit that thumbs up button. I got some apple juice today, so no coffee. Devin probably has coffee producing the show, so if you want to keep his coffee hot and my apple juice cold, hit the thumbs up button. But on the pregame show, this is what we do at 11 in the morning Eastern time. I go through yesterday's slate, talk a little bit about that strategy wise. Go through today's slate, just the first look. This is what I do in the morning. So it's like I have not looked at anything. I'm just going through results DB, which is free on RotoGrinders. And you can see, we don't have the updated point totals. I think they still have to upload that, but we still get exposures for the GPPs for some top players. Study how they made lineups and see how you could improve in the future. So if you have any strategy questions, if you have any questions about any of the tools on RotoGrinders, any of the content on RotoGrinders, sign up for premium, rotogrinders.com/premium, $39.99 a month. It's all the tools that I use. So it's open kimono. This is exactly what I use. You'll get some of the premium stuff up here. And if you have any questions, I know this is archived for later. A lot of people listen to this later as a podcast, or they go to the YouTube video later. But if you want your questions answered, you show up to YouTube Live, and I answer them. The YouTube people are the most important people in the world, especially if they hit the thumbs up button. Right? Sean George is here. Brian Schlink. We needed your show yesterday. Oh, I'm sorry. We had with that swole cast. There was like a million shows yesterday. NBA is going on. You may not get this every day. I'm sorry. Sam George's Champions League is back today. You got some soccer in the show today? No, we have a specialist package. Go buy the specialist package. It includes all the sports that no one plays except for me. I play MMA now, so I'm into MMA. Brett Appley has good content for that. But we have PSU fans and Fear My Turtle doing the soccer content now, and I've been playing against them for 5 years in the soccer lobby. So they're two of the people that I block in my block list for soccer cash games. So they have to be good. Man Monkey 600 says buy the audiobook and you have Jordan anytime you want. Yeah, if you want to buy my audio course, 15 hours, theoryofdfs.com. Go check that out if you want. But I'm going to look through results DB. This is what I do in the morning. Okay? Go through. I made my lineups. I made about 100 lineups yesterday, or 80 lineups, something like that yesterday. But I like going through. Sometimes I may do this the night before. If I have time at 11:30 at night, if I want to check out some stuff. But most of the time I do this in the morning. I go choose some 150 max type players and check out exposures. Where did they get leverage? How did they construct lineups? Okay? So I look through all of this, and now we're going to start with pitcher. And I think the biggest thing that you'll see at pitcher is that a lot of the sharp players played very little Tyler Chatwood. Chipotle Addict did some, but he also went way off the board and played Toussaint, who did great, and Jordan Montgomery, who didn't do great. So he and Zach Gallen, he went really off the board, right? Very little Castillo, very little Carrasco. He tried to get a lot of his leverage at pitcher. Most of the others that I've selected played a healthy amount of Castillo or Carrasco or both. Right, JBC maybe a little under the field, went off the board, a little bit more Eflin or Bialik. It's not like they did it very well. Like ending just went 100% Carrasco and no Castillo. So we're gonna see when you take a look at the pitcher ownership of these exposures, it's gonna relate to the bats, okay? Because most likely, I already looked at it, so I know. Most likely, if you're taking zero of Luis Castillo, you're probably playing Cleveland, right? You're playing a leverage stack against him, right? Say for Chipotle Addict. And then Chatwood, if you're not going to play a lot of Chatwood, you're going to play Royals leverage against them. And say for Lindblom, right? Ending, very little Lindblom. Probably going to play White Sox leverage against them, especially on a 7-game slate. On a 13-game slate like we have today, we have a lot more options. But on a smaller slate, 5 to 7 games, like if you're going to fade a pitcher, like completely, like I'm going to just fade a chalk pitcher, it makes sense to play a stack against them because how many options do you have on a 5 to 7 game slate? Wes Passanold asks, when do we get to some dumpster diving? We will. We'll talk about today's slate. I've looked a little. What do you think of a Philly stack today? We'll take a look. I liked the Phillies yesterday. I had plenty of the Phillies. My most exposure yesterday were the Phillies, were the Royals, were the Orioles, and then Toronto, which kind of let me down. Right? Toronto was kind of the fill-in. They came in a little bit more chalky than I thought yesterday. So I actually decreased. I was going to go like heavy on Toronto until I saw ownership creep up. But my pitcher exposure, like Chatwood yesterday, to phrase Derek Hardy, was a donkey play. Okay, if you played Chatwood yesterday in GPP, you did something wrong, and I know Devin did. Devin's in producing, and I know he did. And I told him that before the show. Chatwood was 30% owned at similar price as Castillo and Carrasco. Yes, I know he changed his pitch mix. It's a 2-game sample size, people. Okay, we have a very vast history of Chatwood being a crappy pitcher. Okay, so if you're going to pay $9K plus for him, if he came in at 10% owned and you wanted to have a little at low ownership, okay, I get it. Okay, but not at this ownership. But just take Castillo and Carrasco. Just go overboard. I had Castillo or Carrasco in 100% of my lineups. I played 0% Chatwood, and I know I pulled out. Chipotle played some. I know I pulled out a bunch of people that didn't play much. But if you go through, I mean, I've gone through a lot more than just, 7 players. Most of the sharper MME players in the 150 max played very little of Tyler Chatwood. Okay? Because for that very reason, it's a 2-game sample size. If you watch the game, you're right. Chatwood did not walk anyone, right? But he was throwing the ball right down the middle, like every single pitch. So if you faded Chatwood, I think in some single entries, he was 40% owned. I get it more on Fanduel. Fanduel, the pricing was a little bit, I don't know. But still, I mean, he was the first player I X'd out. It was like, there's no way I'm playing Chatwood, and I'm playing tons of Royals. They're cheap. Play the Royals against him. Would you see? We'll still say that on the main slate without Carrasco and Castillo. Well, we don't. Well, you're making up a situation now. If we took those other games on the slate, and then we have Chatwood, and then we have a lot of crappy pitchers, I would have rather played more Zach Gallen. I played more Zach Gallen. But we can't just say, well, if we took off the 30, 40% owned play, 80% of the pitcher's ownership, but we got rid of it. Then would you have played Chatwood? Well, that's a different story. Right? That's a completely different story. We had other pitchers to play. Son George said, I faded Chatwood completely, but what did I miss on the Royals yesterday? Was the decision points fading Chatwood and Price? Yeah. It's a leverage stack. If Chatwood's going to be nearly 30% owned and you're taking 0 and it's a 7-game slate, why aren't you playing Royals? I'm not saying to play all your lineups be the Royals. If you're going to fade Castillo at 40% owned and then not play the Indians, like in what scenario? Think of the outcome. Okay, if your lineups were to do well, if you faded Castillo, for instance, that means Castillo doesn't put up a good enough score. If he puts up an 8-point score, the only way that he only puts up an 8-point score is if the Indians do well enough. I'm not saying to play. You don't play 5-man stacks, but you should have some Indians. If you're going to play 0% of them, if you're going to play 0% of Chatwood, maybe you don't play 5-man Royal stacks. But maybe you do have a Mondesi at shortstop at a weak position, a Perez at catcher. Maybe you have a Merrifield overpriced, seemingly, at second base. Maybe you mix them in. Maybe you mix in Solero or Hearn or something, or Alex Gordon for cheap. Like, how do you on a 7-game slate, if it was a 13-game slate, there's a lot more options. 7-game slate, if you're going to fade a jockey pitcher, why aren't you taking bats against him? You're essentially betting on that outcome. If you don't take bats against him, you're just saying that both sides don't do well enough. Like Chatwood gets a 12-point score and the Royals put up 3 runs, right? So like the stack doesn't get there, neither the pitcher doesn't get there. I get it. On a 13-game slate, I can understand that. But if I'm fading a chalk pitcher completely, there's no doubt in my mind that I have bats against him. It doesn't have to be in 30% of your lineups. I did not have 30% Royals yesterday. I had about 15%. Out of my 100 lineups or so, I had about 15% Royal stacks and mixed in everywhere. A lot more Phillies. Phillies were my top exposed team. But we could see that. It makes sense when you look at the pitcher ownership, right, of sharper players. We're gonna expect to see Chipotle Addict probably playing some Indians in Cleveland. Indians in Cincinnati, right? We're going to see some Indians on Ending, right? We're going to see all these zeros over here, all this low on Chatwood, probably going to see Royals. Anyone that's under on Lindblom, probably going to see White Sox against him, right? Something like that. So if we go over here and we're going to check all, now we're going to go take away the pitcher. I'm going to go sort by field and see where the players went. So like here, Utica, Brewers went a lot against Gio Gonzalez. So Utica had a lot of Hura at second base, which is a weak position yesterday. Hoskins at first. I'm just looking for the reds and the greens and the reds, blues, and greens, that like the overweight stances, right? If we look through down here, so like JK 123, who was like tied for first yesterday. Take a look at his exposures, right? Look. Francisco, a lot of Orioles. Altuve at second base, way over the field. Right, a lot of Astros. Baltimore, some Yankees, some Braves, Astros, a little bit of Royals, a little under on the Blue Jays, except for Tellez. This is a little all over the place. A lot more Yankees. We can see here, JK won last night, okay? Tied for first. And had 35% Tauchman with only 7 points. He didn't do great, right? Had Kevin Biggio didn't do anything. Bo Bichette, he did fine, right? But he had just enough of the Royals, the Orioles, one-offs. If we take a look, like where's like Mondesi, 4%. I'm looking for Merrifield. Where's Merrifield? See, Jose Ramirez at 13%. Pretty much you needed Jose Ramirez to win yesterday. But here, Whit Merrifield, 3%. The guy won. 3% Whit Merrifield. And some, he had over the field on Bregman. Santander had a decent game, right? Altuve. Soler, he had 13% Ramirez. If you took a look at his whole lineup set, his first place lineup, his next lineup probably wasn't in the top, 300. He had enough exposure. So he was wrong in a lot of places. Some of these Cubs, some of these Blue Jays. But since he wasn't playing Chatwood, he mixed in the Royals. Take a look at TJ or TJ. A lot of Ronald Acuna didn't really get there. Bryce Harper didn't really get there, right? To be overweight. I was overweight on Harper also. Kingery, he was a lot on the Phillies we see, right? 32% McCutchen. 30% Guerrero didn't do anything, right? Gurriel, Toronto Blue Jays. Look at how much Mondesi he had. Grichuk, but he had Soler. He had enough Jose Ramirez, enough Merrifield. He had some Royals. He had Ramirez. So even though he went overweight and 30, that didn't work out. Sal Perez worked out. Bryce Harper wasn't worth it. Acuna didn't do anything. Hoskins wasn't worth it. He got Ramirez. He got Real Muto. He got enough Bichette. Kevin Biggio. TJ still had a good night. Right? Just under on the Cubs. A lot of the sharper players were under on the Cubs. JBC, maybe not so much. Chipotle wasn't under on the Cubs, but you saw that he was going very high leverage at pitcher. So that makes sense. Like I said, if you look at the pitcher ownership, it relates to the batter ownership, especially on kind of like small to mid-sized slates, right? If you're gonna play a lot of Jordan Montgomery and Zach Gallen or something like that as your pitcher combination and fade Carrasco and Castillo, most likely you're going to play chalkier stacks. You're getting your leverage there, and you're playing Tauchman, you're playing Bryant, you're playing Baez, you're playing the Cubs were probably the best projected team. Of course, by the 5th inning, they were getting blown out. They just started coming out of the game. So you got screwed in that regard, right? He played Acuna, didn't do anything, right? This makes sense because of his pitcher ownership. Ending, on the other hand, he played a ton. Let's see, what did he do? Right, he played 100% Carrasco, okay? Played no Castillo. So I'm going to assume we're going to see some Indians here. I'm going to assume that. So assume he had Jose Ramirez. Let's go down. Yeah, look, there you go. See? I didn't have to even look. He had 0 Castillo. So he had Lindor, Ramirez, Santana, 17%. Franmil Reyes, 23%. Natural. He faded Castillo completely. So he's going to have Indians. He went overboard, but, I mean, he didn't need to. I mean, look, Ramirez was 4% owned. He had 33% of them. Lindor was 3% owned. He had 29% of them. Right? He just went overboard. Bo Taylor, right? 17% owned. 2% owned Santana, 17% exposure. Franmil was 1% owned. He had 23% of them. Domingo Santana was 1% owned. He had 15% of them. That was his strategy, this slate. Ending strategy was take one of the top 2 pitchers, no Chatwood, pair him with a whole bunch of, Gio Gonzalez or LeBlanc or Gallen or whoever, a second starting pitcher, and then leverage off of the chalkiest pitcher on the slate. Castillo was chalkier than Carrasco, which made no sense to me. I thought it should be the other way around. What did it end up being? 39. It was close enough, but I expected it to flip-flop. I expected Carrasco to be like 40%, Castillo 35%. I expected Chatwood to be like 25%. He was 40% in some contest. Wow. And they say that there's no edge left in DFS. They say that. So let's go to the YouTube chat. If you got questions, I got answers, or I got potential answers. Some of my answers are, it depends, because that's the correct answer, but I still answer you. Man Monkey 600 says in Fanduel he was 45% in the quarter GPP tournament. Crazy. Yeah, especially on sites where you only play one pitcher. Like you have Carrasco and Castillo there. Just play one of them. Just play them. Hey Blender, are you doing basketball tonight? No. I didn't play basketball yesterday, so I have no idea what happened yesterday. All I know is that people tilt on Twitter. Apparently, everyone got Malone yesterday. Malone had some weird rotation. That's all I saw on Twitter. Was everyone complaining about Malone? But that's like normal basketball Twitter. Because doesn't everyone complain about him or Pop or someone like that, right? Fizdale's not in the league anymore. Don't have to worry about him. Sean George says, and you think stacking against a pitcher you faded is more likely to be a good idea on a shorter slate because of the lack of options. Yes, it makes sense. I just weighed their low win percentage on Slate IQ too highly. Just because they have a low, you can't, like here, I'm going to show you Slate IQ. This is in premium. RotoGrinders.com/premium, sign up. Slate IQ is something I use every day, but it's not gospel. Like, don't treat it as like, oh, I can't play the Indians. Only 1.3 win percentage, but you get super leverage. If you wanted to do it, you could do it. The Cubs were obviously Yankees. I get it at the top, but they're going to be popular, so you can get negative leverage. I did play some Cubs and I did play some Yankees. Okay, that's no problem. I had no problem playing Baltimore yesterday, even at 1% down over here. They were just so cheap and like no one's playing them against Jordan Yamamoto making his first start of the season. So I'm like, why not? I had a ton of Renato Nunez. I had like in a quarter of my lineups. Nunez, Smith, Santander, Alberto, Cisco. Because, I mean, I thought they would come. Sometimes I look at some of the ownership that Jamino comes out with, and it's like it's based on a mathematical model, but not in like a psychological model, where like a guy on Baltimore would be 2% owned. And I'd be like, nah, he's going to be 1%. Like it's going to be even less than that. It looks like low ownership, but I think it's going to be even lower than that, just from a psychological perspective. It makes sense, right? It makes sense for Francisco to be 3% owned, but I think he's going to be 1% owned, right? Just the way things worked out. So you don't necessarily have to go by, gospel. I'm more likely to take Slate IQ into account on much larger slates. There's just so few options. Like if I don't play Baltimore, I don't play Kansas City. Like who am I playing? I'm just playing the chalk. Like I got to find a way to go off the board somewhere, right? Either I get it at pitcher, or I got to go to lower win percentage teams. But still, Baltimore, Kansas City was positive leverage by far because of Chatwood. Cleveland was positive leverage because of Castillo. I mean, you still could have done it. It's low probability, but you're doing it in large field GPPs. Maybe you don't do it in single entry, small field stuff. But like Toronto was overowned, and that's why I like the Phillies. Like you take a look at the Phillies right here, 4 points on Slate IQ, positive leverage right over here. I could have taken Miami, but I chose to play LeBlanc instead. LeBlanc and the Orioles rather than Yamamoto and the Marlins. That was the decision I made. So I just look at this and I go, where can I find something that I played Diamondbacks yesterday. 4.9 over here. That didn't necessarily work out, but they were more expensive. The cheaper the stack is, I don't mind lower win percentages because they're so cheap. Because how much does it take for you to get there? Especially on a 7-game slate. 13-game slate, we're going to see this list being way long. We see teams that are down in that 1% range. Maybe I have a lot more options. I don't have to go all the way down. But on a shorter slate, you have to find somewhere to be different in a large field GPP. Let's see. Right. Devin in the chat even says, like Blender says, they're right. There's no always and never, just more likely and less likely. Yes, I'm less likely to play stacks that are low in Slate IQ. I'm less likely to play stacks that have negative leverage, but it doesn't mean you can't play them at all. They're still high. They're still the best. The Cubs yesterday were the best projected stack, the best projected value. But it doesn't mean you go overboard. Like once I saw that they were going to be owned, I didn't want to have 0 of them because there's only 7 games on the slate. I'm not playing Chatwood. I'm getting my leverage there. I'm playing Royals. I'm getting my leverage there. I'm playing overboard on the Phillies, so I'm getting leverage there. So like a Philly stack with like a Chris Bryant one-off isn't the end of the world, right? Or Javi Baez in a shortstop spot. I'm playing Phillies with no Gregorius in the shortstop spot, and I have Baez in there. Well, that's good enough. And then I'm playing no Chatwood. I'm playing Carrasco and Gio Gonzalez. I mean, Gio didn't work out, but like I got enough leverage. I'm done. I don't need to play, the quarter of my lineups to be Cub stacks. I don't have to play like I was under the field on Tauchman. Tauchman was like 25% owned as a one-off. Makes sense. He was 2,600 and leading off for the Yankees against Zach Eflin as a lefty. I get it. But should you really be overboard on a batter? No. So I had like 14% of him. He was thrown in there. He was a one-off. He was in some Yankees 3-mans, those types of things, right? I played a lot more Lindblom, so I had salary. So I was playing Stanton over him. And Stanton was lower owned because I had the salary to do that. So it doesn't mean you don't play these guys. It just means that you may be under the field, right? It doesn't mean I don't play Cubs. It just means I may be under. Doesn't mean I don't play Yankees. It just means I may be under. More likely to be under, depending on what other options there are on the slate. Yeah, Anthony Faila? Last night on Fanduel, I was leaving behind 2.5 to 6K in salary on the day. Right. Because Fanduel's pricing yesterday was to play whoever you want, right? Literally, you can play whoever you want on Fanduel when their pricing was so soft. But even DK. I mean, if you didn't pair 2 high-priced pitchers, you could essentially play whoever you want. Is the number positive number or the better number with the stack sheet? Well, on the Slate IQ, I'll just explain. All of this is based on, okay, let me explain what Slate IQ does. Just so you understand why you don't take it as gospel. Okay? So it even explains it to you. These are based on 4 and 5-man hitter stacks combined based on the results from the 25 most similar slates, based on pricing, based on positions, based on ownership, based on the context of the slate, based on pitcher ownership, based on everything. And it compares, it's going to run simulations to see what 4 or 5 man stack, what percent of the time shows up in the winning GPP lineup? Okay. So it doesn't have to be a 5 man. It could be a 4 man, both combined. And then what it's going to do, it's going to show you that percentage right down here. But it's also, this is based on our RG ownership projection. So this field number is how owned is the 4 and 5 man hitter stacks in aggregate. So this 10.6% could be a Cubs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It could be a 1, 2, 3, 4. It could be a 2, 3, 6, 7, 8. Right? All the combinations of 4 and 5 man stacks, what we expect their ownership to be in aggregate based on the ownership projections. If the ownership projections are a little off, obviously the leverage is going to be off. So it compares the difference between the chance of this stack being in the winning lineup with how owned the stack will be to give you the difference, negative meaning that the Cubs stack was more owned than its likelihood of being in the winning lineup by 14%, by 1.5% difference. That's what this chart tells you. And it's based on those simulations, which is not gospel, just based on a simulation. And it's based on the ownership. So like on this, we had on RG, Chatwood projected owned like twice as less when this came out. Chatwood was projected for 15% ownership, 12 to 15% on RG. Well, he ended up 29%. So obviously that's going to affect ownership of all these types of stacks based on the pricing. So the leverage scores would change. Now the winning percentage won't, but the leverage would change. So if you think that based on this Slate IQ, if you think Chatwood is going to be more owned, which means he's an expensive pitcher. Okay. So, Carrasco is going to be owned. Castillo is going to be owned. So if you add Chatwood, who's a 9K pitcher to that means that more people are spending money on pitching, which means that the low cost stacks are going to be less owned than you think, than what our ownership projections even say they are. So that's why, in order to fit in a Yankee stack with Stanton or something like that, it's going to be hard to play Chatwood and Carrasco, right? You're gonna have to play lower owned. You're gonna have to play lower cost stacks, which is going to increase the ownership of Kansas City, of Baltimore, of Miami, of Philadelphia, even, right? Just the dynamics of spending $50,000 in salary. So that's why I don't take Slate IQ as gospel. And I don't even take our own ownership projections as gospel. Sometimes I look at ownership and I go, based on math, I see that. It's a mathematical formula. I get it. But people are irrational. Okay? There are plenty of slates where I look at and I go, there's no way Ross Stripling is 27% owned. He'll be 15% owned, but I just don't. He may mathematically warrant being 27% owned, but based on what I hear about in the industry on shows and what I think people are going to do, I think it'll come up less owned. But once you make that mental assessment, you have to now adjust that mentally throughout the course of your entire player pool. So I thought that Chatwood would be twice as owned as ownership projections across the industry, not just RotoGrinders. Just based on what I hear, the pitch mix changed. 2 games, he's great. He's up against the Royals, who suck. That type of stuff. I'm like, no. Mathematically, he shouldn't be more than 15% owned, but I think it'll be double that. So you have to, once you do that, you have to change you can't just look by all the numbers you're looking at. So there's an art to that of how will people act psychologically? Because all of the numbers all rely on rational actors, not on, based on our projections and based on the salary constraints and the positional risk constraints, we project him to be 14% owned. And then I go, no, based on what I'm hearing and based on the position, I think he's going to be 22% owned. Just based on that. So Anthony Fowler says yes. So in a perfect world, you'd want exposure to stacks in Slate IQ. Like I said, don't take it as gospel. Right? This is just a simulation. These are okay. It's the margin of error here could be, decent enough where, Like 2.4% could be 3.6%, right? It's just to give you an idea of places to find leverage with your stacks. Okay? Who's more likely to do well. But they typically line up with the projections also. It didn't take a rocket scientist to know that the Cubs and the Yankees were the best projected teams yesterday. Hence, they'll get owned. But yes, you're looking for positive leverage. Doesn't mean you don't play. Doesn't mean you don't play bats that are in good spots. But this is where I'm looking for the low owned, under the radar types of stacks. Jenna Sandy says, I tried the leverage strategy by stacking the Reds against Carrasco. Didn't work out so well, but that's what you're supposed to do. Yes, that was a viable strategy in large field GPPs. But understand, you're going to be wrong most of the time. Just understand that. If you're going to take, okay, I'm going to take the stack against the highest priced pitcher, and I'm just going to stack the Reds against Carrasco. Okay, just understand that you're going to fail 99 out of 100 times. But the one time you do, hopefully you'll win the whole thing. I get it. Typically, the pitching was subpar yesterday, so I was less inclined to stack against Carrasco and Castillo. That was just me. Okay. Anthony Fiala says, so Brewers, Arizona, Philadelphia, he lists some teams, was the best plays. If you're looking at that sheet right now with no prior knowledge of what occurs last. Yeah. They're not, don't use the term best. They provided you leverage. But remember, you're building a whole lineup. Okay? You're taking 2 pitchers and 8 batters, right? 8 batters. Catcher first, second, third, short, 3 outfielders, right? On DK. Okay? A stack is only 4 or 5 guys, right? If you're already getting leverage at pitcher, then you don't need leverage at your bats. If you're not getting leverage at pitcher, then you may need some leverage at bat. So let's say, for instance, I was going to play Carrasco and Castillo in the same lineup or something like that, and play the Cubs. 5-man. Throw in a cheap guy, throw in a Hayward so I can make that happen. Well, based on Slate IQ and based on the ownership projections that you don't have enough. If you're playing large field GPPs, you don't have enough leverage. If your next thought, you have 3 spots left, remember. If your next spot is to put in Tauchman at 25% owned, then you're screwing up. You're not getting enough leverage. If you're going to play the Chicago 5-man, the Cubs 5-man with 2 chalk pitchers, then you throw in, how do I throw in a Baltimore bat, right? You need leverage. So this is a way to judge leverage. It doesn't mean one team is better than the other, right? You could get a lot of leverage off of playing Arizona yesterday. So this allows you to in my Diamondback stacks, I could play chalk pitchers. I could play Tauchman in my Diamondback stacks because it's showing me that it's a fairly decent win rate and positive leverage. But I can play a negative leverage stack. I can play a Yankee stack. Just I need to play that in a lineup with a lower owned pitcher or a lower owned 3-man to go with it. So that's why I didn't stay away from the Cubs. I didn't stay away from the Yankees. I just made sure to play them in contrarian lineups. If I'm playing the Yankees with Tauchman, or if I'm playing a 5-man with Tauchman, Stanton, Torres, Sanchez, who hit a home run. He finally did something yesterday. Voit. And I'm also playing, Lindblom and Carrasco. Like that 3-man. I need to get different. Maybe I play Jose Ramirez. Maybe I play a Franmil Reyes, a lower owned. So that's all this is telling you. Where do you need to get your leverage? You say the projected ownership comes from what you hear. How do they figure that ownership equation? It's based on math. It's an algorithm. Jamino, if you talk to Jamino, if you're in the premium Discord, or even if you're in the free Discord, there's a free chat. I believe they call it poverty chat. That's what they call it. The people that chat in there call it poverty chat. I think you could add Jamino. He'll explain a little bit more. It's based on a math equation, based on an algorithm. Because ownership has to be, if one guy is going to be high owned, I don't know where the show is. If Tauchman, for instance, is going to be 20+% owned at 2,600 in the outfield, It's going to take up an outfield spot in 25% of lineups. It's going to take up $2,600 in salary in 25% of lineups. So what could fit in the rest? Assuming that most people spend most of their salary. If Carrasco is going to be 40% owned, what does that mean? Who could be owned in the rest of the builds, right? So it's based on math, based on who's available at the position. We knew that like someone like Bo Bichette, like the shortstops yesterday were weak. So they were going to be higher owned. The better shortstops were going to be higher owned just based on positional scarcity. But once they come out of the player pool and those prices came out of the player pool, we knew that Whit Merrifield and Jose Altuve were going to be low owned based on their position. That you had to pay up at second base when there were a lot more pay down options at second base. So they had to be lower owned because you couldn't play 2 9K pitchers. You couldn't spend 16 to 18K on pitcher and spend up at catcher and spend up at second. You can't. You just don't have enough salary. Oh, Anthony says, I have your audiobook you released earlier this month. I really enjoyed it. Well, thank you. Thank you, Anthony. Theoryofdfs.com if you want to check it out. It's all about game theory. 15 hours of audio. Got a lot of good feedback, especially in the DFS industry where everyone craps on anything. Like I really, it's been good feedback. So not much complaining. So that's good. So YouTube people, what else you got for me? So we got today's slate. Today's slate to me is easy at pitching. You're pretty much, to me, the chalk pitchers are basically Bauer, Boyd, Kikuchi. There, you're doing something like that. Kikuchi, they still priced at 5K. I think Kikuchi will be the highest owned pitcher on the slate. Good thing I got on him the last slate he was on. People didn't realize that his fastball is up to like 97 now. He's facing Colorado in Seattle. But understand it's Kikuchi. Yeah, who knows what could go wrong, but he's only 5K. Kikuchi would be playable today at 7,500. So at 5K, I think that's the chalk combination you're going to see. You're going to see Bauer, Kikuchi. Bauer, Senzatella maybe. Bauer, Boyd, if you're playing cheap stacks. Boyd, Kikuchi. It's going to be some combination of that. I mean, and then anyone else is going to be under-owned. Because, I mean, the rest, I mean, Urias, I know the bat is projecting him for 100 pitches, but I don't think that's right. I don't think Urias. Let's see if Cardi updated this. I'm using the bat X projections here. Okay, yeah, Urias. No, Urias is still there. I'll have to talk to. I'll have to talk to. Yeah, I think he has him as 100 pitches. Maybe he should be at that. I don't know. I didn't think the Dodgers were letting Urias go that long. So because 9,800 seems a little pricey. If he's not, if he goes 100 pitches, okay, I don't mind against the Giants. But 80, 85 pitches, maybe not Urias. Do you make your lineups before getting projected totals? I don't know what that means, Wallstress. I don't make my lineups until an hour before lock. Okay? I do not make a single lineup. I want as much information as possible before I make my decisions. Throughout the day, I'll look, right? I'm looking at this right now. I'm going, okay, Boyd projects well. Kikuchi, okay, I get it. So you're going to spend around 16K at pitcher. So maybe I don't need if I'm playing a lot of Kikuchi or a lot of Senzatella or something like that, I may not need vomit stacks. I may be able to play more expensive stacks. Or the vomit stacks end up becoming under-owned because people are playing Kikuchi. So that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at, okay, this looks like a chalky type of construction. Then I go over to batters. And I start looking to see here, like who point per dollar wise. Like Cody Bellinger, 2 point, yeah, against the margin at 4,800. Okay, that looks pretty good. I sort by fantasy points, and I look over here. I don't have ownership yet, so I don't know. I'm like, okay, Bellinger looks pretty good. Ohtani looks pretty good projection-wise. Obviously, Trout, but Trout's Trout. Kepler, 4,300 against Junis. Bijou, I'm looking for like point per dollar plays. Up over here, Soler against Smeltzer, 4,200. Not bad. Right? Maybe not Mookie Betts at 6,000, but less there. Harper against Wright, 1.8x. Maybe in stacks. But I'm just looking. I'm not building anything yet. I'm just looking. Okay. because we don't even have starting lineups yet. We don't even have the batting orders. Who's in, who's out, who's batting where, right? It could be a day someone's taken off, someone's, platoon split or something. I mean, is Benintendi going to be leading off against Rourke, right? He's going to project well. Am I going to be playing a lot of Benintendi? But Benintendi could also be batting 8th or 9th. And if he's batting 8th or 9th at 4,000, then I don't worry about it. So you have to know that information. So to me, there's no point in building lineups now. It's 11:40 in the morning, Eastern time. The slate does it's a 7 o'clock slate. We're not even going to get most of the lineups until 3 o'clock or so, right? We got how many games in the San Diego, Seattle. Yeah, we have some LA Dodgers. We may not even get those lineups till like 6 o'clock. So I mean, you could look at stuff, but I mean, I'm not researching all day. I'm not sitting here digging into whatever. I'm just okay. First look, take a look what the bat says. Take a look at potential ownership and what potential constructions could be, and then just sit and wait. I'm just waiting for starting lineups. See if anything changes. Anthony Fela says, in NBA and NFL, you could pivot off a heavy owned player to a different position, less owned. Can you do that in MLB, or is that just for pitch? Well, you could do that. You could do that for positions. I mean, the positions on a baseball field, right? A lot of times, Coors games, Story and Arenado become overowned at third and shortstop. So it allows you to pivot and play a different third baseman or a different shortstop. Outfield is much harder. There's a lot more options. So you could do the same thing. I'm typically under the field on Story, most slates that Coors exists. I'll find some other shortstop and then pay $5,800 or whatever for Trevor Story as a one-off. Does batting order factor in stacks? Yeah, of course it does, Edgar Chavez. I don't mind. Okay, let me bring up starting lineups. I'll show you what I tend to do and tend not to do. But remember, it's never an always or never. It's always more likely or less likely. Doesn't mean you don't. Okay, so let's take just anyone's order. Let's take a game. Let's say a game, maybe a game that we like. Game that what game would be good? The Dodgers look fine. Game with too crappy. Okay, yeah, here we go. Twins Royals. Why not? Okay, so I look here. We have the Twins and the Royals. So let's say I'm interested in both teams, and I want to stack them. Okay, this is what I'm taking into account. I'm going to tell you why, based on these projected orders, why the Twins are horrible to stack today. Okay. Oh, this is Fanduel. Let me go to DraftKings. Okay, let's go to Twins Royals. Just as an example. But I'm going to tell you why I don't like the Twins to stack. You got outfielder. And the top 4 batters are all outfielders. You're going to have to fill all your outfield spots on a 13-game slate. So I don't traditionally like that. Okay? Buxton at the bottom of the order. On road teams, I don't mind the bottom of the order as much, especially if they're in a scarce position, catcher, middle infield, or they're cheap. Okay? So, I'm not against Byron Buxton in the Twins because they're on the road. If the Twins were at home, remember, the home team, if they're winning, they don't get 9th inning at bat. So the plate appearance expectation goes down on the bottom of the order. So Byron Buxton, if this was at home, I probably wouldn't even have him in Twin stacks. But I don't mind that much on the road. But also, you have 3 other outfielders. So you have 4 outfielders in the lineup. So I'm less likely to use Buxton because I'd rather use Kepler, Cruz, and Rosario. But I may use much more Garver, even though it's maybe a little bit expensive at $4,500. Definitely use a lot of Arias at a middle infield position. So if I wanted to stack, my key positions would be a lot of Polanco, a lot of Arias, a lot of Garver, the scarce positions. And then I'd mix in everything else. But I don't mind the bottom of the order because they're on the road. Now let's take a look at the Royals. Okay, we got good positional mix. Second base, catcher, batting third, always good. Mondesi. Now, if Perez bats as a DH and Gallagher is in, like, obviously you can't use them in the same spots, right? So being that Gallagher is batting 8th at home, he is cheap, but he's going to take away a spot that I could use Perez on. So maybe I don't even include Gallagher. I just X him out. Nicky Lopez fills spots that Mondesi or Merrifield could fill. He's batting at the bottom of the order at home. I know he's cheap. I'm less likely to use him. If Mondesi wasn't in, if Merrifield wasn't in, and he was the only second or shortstop eligible player on the Royals, even though he's batting 9th, maybe I do play a little bit of it. But I'm less likely at the bottoms of the home team's order, like the White Sox. If we take a look at White Sox here, like you can't play Collins and Grandal together. Mendick, you could play Garcia at least a little bit higher up in the order, but there's no second baseman here. So if you're desperate for second baseman, sure, play Danny Mendick. But outside of that, bottoms of the order at home probably are going to get one less at bat. If the stack goes off, Mendick may not get 4 at bats. He may not get a 5th at bat because they're winning. They don't get 9th inning at bats. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. What positions and what part of the order and what their prices are. It doesn't mean I don't play Nicky Lopez. It just means I'm less likely to. Doesn't mean, hey, maybe I do play Cam Gallagher in a couple of lineups instead of Perez. I'm less likely to. Doesn't mean I don't, but I'm less likely to. I'm less likely to play Byron Buxton because I have 3 other outfielders here. But I'm more likely to play Byron Buxton because at least he's the bottom of the order of a road team, right? So you're weighing those things differently. So that's why I just look at these types of orders, right? Toronto Blue Jays, I don't mind. Hey, Teoscar is batting 8th in this projected lineup at 4,300. A little expensive for an 8th hitter, but he's on the road in Boston. He'll come in lower owned because he's batting 8th in this projected order. I don't mind. But like guys like Jackie Bradley on the other end, less so. Bottom of the order for a home team. When I already have I already have outfielders that I could spend it on. I'd rather probably play Verdugo over him. Doesn't mean I don't play him. It just means I'm less likely to. Do you know who's doing the MLB show today, or is there somewhere I could look it up? Yes, just go to the rotogrinders.com/videos page. There's always a schedule up at the top. But Devin has already replied. Dean and Kirkwood are on the show. Right. You have to go to the RotoGrinders homepage, rotogrinders.com/videos if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. I got my how cold is my apple juice? It's getting there. It's almost room temperature. Hit the thumbs up button. I'm just showing you how I just look through orders. But this is all I'm looking at this point. Look, it's all red. Right? We don't know if these orders are going to be these orders. So to make any decisions now, it seems stupid. I'm going to wait. I'm waiting to, I don't make a decision until, I don't know, 5 o'clock maybe. It's going to be later in the day. Slate IQ has to come out. Ownership comes out. Projections change. Orders change. So there's no point. If you're sitting there going, I got to research all day, you don't have to. Especially if you got RotoGrinders Premium. If you either got the bat or you got SIS projections, it does all the work for you. There you go. You also get rankings. You also get Cheese's $1 Million Musings. You get the grind down. You get the expert survey. All at RotoGrinders for premium, and you get the MLB, NFL, NBA, PGA. That's the core 4 package. That's $39.99 a month. It's the same information I use. I paid for it before I even joined the team here at RotoGrinders. So it's like I eat my own dog food. So you can see right here, look, I'm even doing conviction stacks today, right? These are the stacks that'll send you to jail. That's why they call them conviction stacks, because I'm going to be stacking some really weird stuff, right? It's a 13-game slate. Who knows what it's going to be? The vomit stack apparently is the Tigers today. I don't know if I could do it. I don't think I need to do it. See, the problem is with the Tigers is that look how cheap they are. Look at this projected order. Right? You fill shortstop and second base. Of course, you can't play Cabrera and Cron together. right? You make sure to fill in a catcher spot. But look, you can fill in 2 middle infield spots with your first 2 guys. And look how cheap they are. 3,700, 3,000, 2,900. Right, against Cool, a lefty. Kristen Stewart's 2,700. Victor Reyes, 3,300. Candelario, right? You probably want lefties against Cool, especially in Pittsburgh, in PNC or whatever. But do you need this stack? Look how expensive the stack is. What, 3? Look at this. Like a 15K stack? But why do you need a 15K stack? You're not going to be playing them in lineups with Kikuchi, right? Like, I don't need a 15K stack with Kikuchi. I need a 15K stack with like a Bauer Boyd combination. Maybe then I use the Tigers. But apparently the Tigers are the point per dollar vomit stack as of now. Do you look at ceiling for starting pitchers for GPPs? Last night failed by playing Geo on Fanduel. Typically on one pitcher sites, ceiling means more to me on one pitcher sites rather than 2 pitcher sites. 2 pitcher sites, a lot of times your second starting pitcher, you don't like. You're doing because why not? Right? You need someone 6, 7K, right? Like yesterday, if you use Gio Gonzalez as your SB2 yesterday, or you use Wade LeBlanc as your SB2 yesterday, like I get that. I get that on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, like on FanDuel, just you only get points for one pitcher. I'd rather the batters are much more variant since, they'll all get about 4 or 5 at bats, and who knows? Acuna could go 0 for 4. Trout could go 0 for 4. I mean, that's what happens. So at pitcher, when I'm only using one pitcher, I'm much more likely to not use it as a salary saving run prevention type of pitcher. I got 3 strikeouts, 6 innings, 3 earned runs. Like, not in large field GPPs. It's just not going to score enough. And obviously, if your bats go off for 16 runs, sure, then it doesn't matter. But I'm more likely, like yesterday on FanDuel, I think, you play Carrasco or Castillo. If you were to pay down, you go to Yamamoto because he was cheap there, right, yesterday over anyone else. But I think those were the options. I'm much less likely to go off the board at pitcher on FanDuel than just take who's going to give me the most amount of strikeouts, the quality start, and a win. Just give me that pitcher. I could get different at the bats. Then take a guy that, if I get 12 points out of them, if I get 18 points on FanDuel, like squeak out a decent Wade LeBlanc game, right? A quality start game with 2 strikeouts, because he's not striking anyone out. He's not a strikeout pitcher. For an SB2 on DraftKings, sure, do it. You could survive 12 points as your SB2 on DraftKings. 12 points on FanDuel to win a 50,000 person GPP, probably not enough. What stacks look good tonight? I have no idea. Look at the projections. The Tigers. I look at this is my vomit stack. Derek Carty added this for the bat. If you get the bat, he added this top stacks page for basically for vomit stack. It's a vomit stack finder. I'll reload it. It's going to look, this is DK numbers, top stacks by team. So I could sort by point per dollar based on the bat projections. Point per dollar. This has nothing to do with Slate. Like Slate IQ is like how often that is going to show up in the winning lineup. This just means the best point per dollar, not the ceiling. So we could see here the Tigers don't have the highest ceiling out of these teams, but point per dollar wise, they're really cheap, right? So I could take a look at top point per dollar, top 25 point per dollar stacks, top 50 point per dollar stack. But those are all median. They're all based on a median, not the ceiling. So I could look here and go, okay, based on the bats projections, here are some vomit stacks, right? But we can see here, like the Angels have a high ceiling, but I mean, point per dollar wise, they're not great, but they have a higher ceiling than the Royals. The Royals are here at 82. They're slightly better point per dollar, but they have a much lower ceiling, right? Same for the Tigers. Like compared to the Twins, right? The difference point per dollar wise is not dramatic, but the Twins have a higher ceiling. But I go here, I look here. I mean, this is something that you could do by just like going team by team in lineup HQ. But if it'll show it to me here, I'll go, okay, based on the current projections on the bat, show me some vomit stacks. Let me see where the vomit stacks are. And here we go. Doesn't mean I play them, but just the easier way to point them out. So I showed you a bunch of stuff. We went over, what did we learn today, folks? What did we learn today? We learned how Slate IQ works, which is for premium members, rotogrinders.com/premium. We learned a little bit about the stack projections of the bat. We learned a little bit about how to evaluate starting lineups, although you can't make your own lineups until they come out. Anyone that's making lineups now, you're not utilizing information that other people will have 5 hours from now. So wait, you can wait. And what else did we learn? We learned that if you played Tyler Chatwood yesterday, you're a donkey. Okay, that's what we learned today. So for Friday, August 7th, I'll be back on Monday, right? I'll be back on Monday. Then Britt will be doing Wednesday and Friday because I'll be away for a couple of days. But I hope you learned something on the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.